All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Houston, the new executive director of the Wolf River Conservancy. I've had a chance to meet so many of our wonderful supporters over the past few months, but if we have not met, uh, please reach out. I would be delighted to meet with you and discuss the important and valuable work of the Conservancy. And with that, let me welcome you all to tonight's lecture series, which is part of our ongoing educational outreach to the community. We're very excited about sharing tonight's program featuring Tiffany Graham of the National Civil Rights Museum. But first, I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that this Saturday, the Conservancy is hosting the first event in our 2024 Restoration Series presented by Brother International Corporation with the MLK Day of Service out at our Epping Way location. Please see our website, wolfriver.org, for volunteer and registration information. And I'd also like to acknowledge all of our benefactors for 2024. They are Crawford Howard Family Foundation, TC Energy, Bank of America, FedEx, the Hyde Family Foundation, Buckman, International Paper, Jim Karras Subaru, Ring Container Technologies, Brother International Corporation, and Silvano for their ongoing support. Of course, all of our supporters, corporations, and individual donors, volunteers are critically important in allowing us to deliver on our mission, the protection and enhancement of the Wolf River watershed as a sustainable natural resource. As always, gifts of any size are appreciated. Please look for the donation link in the chat box. A few housekeeping details for this evening's lecture. We ask that you do not attempt to record this program with any device. It will be available via YouTube after the program has concluded. If you have any questions during the program, please use the Q&A feature and not the chat box. Our education director, Kathy, will be monitoring the questions and will ask the questions after the program. There will be a Q&A section at the conclusion of Tiffany's portion. Now it's my pleasure to present to you our speaker for this evening, Ms. Tiffany Graham. Tiffany has over 25 years of experience in both for-profit and nonprofit sectors. She currently serves as the Chief Marketing and Development Officer for the National Civil Rights Museum. Tiffany shares our passion for positive social change. Along with the National Civil Rights Museum, we aim to educate and inspire communities to drive meaningful change by promoting active and healthy lifestyles, as well as supporting economic development in underserved neighborhoods. So without further ado, Tiffany, I'll pass it to you this evening.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I appreciate the warm welcome, and truly it's an honor and a pleasure to be with you this evening to share a little bit more about the National Civil Rights Museum and really in partnership with Wolf River Conservancy, because we all have a shared interest and passion and desire for making our community a better place. And so I'm excited to share a little bit about what we've been up to at the museum. You can go to the next slide. So for those that are not aware or haven't had an opportunity to visit the National Civil Rights Museum, we were a museum founded in 1991. For those of y'all that know, you know that the Lorraine Motel was the site of where Dr. King was assassinated, where he spent his final days in Memphis and where he was ultimately assassinated. And it is now our commitment to continue to honor and preserve the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Our mission is to chronicle the American Civil Rights Movement and to tell the ongoing struggle for human rights. We educate and serve as a catalyst to inspire action and create positive social change. And so many of you may not know the story of the Lorraine Motel and the National Civil Rights Museum, what we know now today as the National Civil Rights Museum. But after Dr. King was assassinated, well, I should even say before Dr. King was assassinated, the Lorraine Motel was one of the primary, hot places really to stay for African Americans in Memphis. As many of you know, this was during a segregated time. And so the Lorraine Motel really served the Black community, and in particular, many celebrities that would come through Memphis would stay at the Lorraine Motel. It was a place that was known to be an upscale place to stay when folks were in Memphis. It had a pool. It had 2 floors. There were a great restaurant. It was actually a restaurant. They served really great food, and a lot of the celebrities that came through also performed at the Lorraine Motel. So it was really the happening place to be. And after Dr. King was assassinated in 1968, the museum actually fell into over the years. It fell into disrepair, and ultimately, it was not habitable. And there was talk about raising the Lorraine Motel and turning it, I believe, into a parking lot. And fortunately, thanks to many of our Memphis citizens and elected officials and other community-minded folks, they said, "Oh no, we can't do that. This is a historic site, and we need to preserve it." And so, in the late '80s, a foundation was created in order to start to fundraise and raise funds, including in partnership with the state and the city. And as I mentioned earlier, the National Civil Rights Museum was founded in 1991. So last year we celebrated our 32nd anniversary, and over many years, the museum has evolved into what we know today, which is a place where over 300,000 people come to visit every year. Usually about 40,000 of those 300,000 people are coming into Memphis from outside of the country, which is really exciting. And it is truly our commitment and our obligation to continue to tell the stories of the civil rights movement and educate all people on what happened in our countries, from basically enslaved people through Dr. King's assassination, and then continue to talk about the movements and the legacies, or movements that were inspired by his legacy, even post 1968. So I'd love to share a short video with you all that talks a little bit more about the museum, and also provide some words from our president, Dr. Russ Wigginton.
My vision for the National Civil Rights Museum is to build on the tremendous legacy that has been established since our founding in 1991. When we think about the ability to educate and to serve as a catalyst for positive social change in this country, we have a distinct opportunity at this very moment to center ourselves in the country and in the world during a tumultuous time, to ensure that civil and human rights and social justice remains at the forefront of all of our minds. And we have a sense of responsibility to do all that we can as individuals and as communities to make this place, to make this country, to make this world the best that it can be.
The continued commitment that the museum, that its curators, and that the city has in making sure that this is one of the staples of Memphis, that they know that what Dr. King stood for, what he accomplished right here in Memphis, is something that we need to make sure is at the forefront of everyone's mind.
It's a great education for anybody coming through, and I've heard a lot of parents explaining to their children as I'm walking through the exhibits and so forth. It's a good education opportunity for the kids.
It is so important for us to engage the next generation to understand the importance of civil and human rights in our society.
Coming from a school system that didn't really educate me on my own history, I think it's very important for this opportunity for kids to come out, people of color to come out and experience their history firsthand.
I believe through the lenses of education, arts and culture, and economic empowerment, we have a distinct opportunity right now to help our country catapult into being its best self. And to do so through the lenses of Dr. King and his legacy of nonviolence and his legacy of social justice.
So I love that video because I think in just 2 minutes it encapsulates what the National Civil Rights Museum does, what it stands for, and also our hope for the future as we're continuing to engage new audiences, younger generations that will carry the torch forward and really caring about our community and making sure that we're all working collaboratively together and thriving, living our best lives and our best selves. So for the National Civil Rights Museum, we have established 3 strategic pillars that are situated under our mission. One is education. And so really, since our founding, we have focused on that. That's really true to our mission, which is to educate the world on civil and human rights, and in particular, the American civil rights movement. And I'm proud to say that we have probably about 90,000, almost 100,000 students that come through the museum every year, not just from Memphis, but from all over the country, who come and really have an opportunity to engage with this history. And it's wonderful, truly wonderful to see when folks are coming through the museum across the spectrum, right? Some who have no knowledge of this history, and others who are scholars in this work. And everyone leaves the museum truly transformed and having learned something new. So education is really critical to our efforts. We also focus on arts and culture. And as I mentioned earlier, the Lorraine Motel, this is a bit of a nod also to our history. The Lorraine Motel was the epicenter of arts and culture and a place where people gathered. And so we want to continue to use arts and culture as a way to bring people together in educating and engaging folks and inspiring them to be catalysts for positive social change. And as our president likes to say, oftentimes it's the arts or entertainment that really brings people together, right? That's when people bring down the walls, forget about differences, and just have a good time. And so this is also an important part of our strategy as we go forward in the next few years, is finding those ways where we can bring people together in a really fun and meaningful and inspiring way through the arts and through culture. And then lastly, economic empowerment. So if you're not aware, what actually brought Dr. King to Memphis in 1968 was his focus in his final days, in his final years, on economic empowerment, on the Poor People's Campaign, really trying to solve some of the poverty issues that had emerged from segregation and just in general what was happening in our country at the time. And so he came to Memphis in support of the sanitation workers who were striking for better, fair wages, health insurance, other kinds of benefits. And so we want to carry that forward with our continued focus on economic empowerment and trying to educate folks on the disparities that continue to exist in wage gaps, and as well, under this economic empowerment umbrella, is health equity. So we do also focus and have done a lot of programming around access to healthcare and equity for all, which I know is also, as it relates to health, is also Wolf River's focus as we think about what are those green spaces, what are those healthy environments that really create that connect community and create thriving communities. And so that is also a focus for the National Civil Rights Museum. Next slide. So just to share a bit, we do lots of programming all throughout the year, but just to share a few of the things that we do. King Day. So I was excited to see Wolf River's doing their service event on Saturday. That's wonderful. So you go on Saturday and then come on Monday to the National Civil Rights Museum for our King Day celebration. It is our largest event per capita of the year. Last King Day, we hosted over 11,000 people on our museum campus. And usually we have about that number every year. So we've been watching the weather reports very closely. And so our prayer is that the weather, at least the snow and any rain, will hold up for us to have a really great celebration on Monday. But that is definitely a really fantastic day to celebrate Dr. King's life, his legacy, and to bring so many different people from all over the community together. We also do commemorate every year the day of Dr. King's death, which was April 4th. And we have a ceremony in our courtyard right in front of you. Can see there in the middle the wreath that's on the balcony of room 306. And we have a commemoration ceremony every year that is a very important part of our museum experience every year. And then lastly, another key program that we have is the Ruby Bridges Reading Festival. Now, many of y'all may be familiar with Ruby Bridges. She was the little girl that integrated New Orleans school system. She was also the feature in that Norman Rockwell painting of the little girl with the sort of the military soldiers behind her escorting her to school. She is in partnership with us every year. She is a beautiful, wonderful, thriving woman that has really has dedicated her life to continuing to educate people on both her experience, what it means today, and continuing to inspire folks. And so every year she comes to Memphis to partner with us on our Ruby Bridges Reading Festival, which is really a community literacy event for K through 12. Mostly K through elementary is what I would say. And every year we give out over 5,000 books to the community. And it's a really fun day for families and young children, face painting and, all kinds of fun stuff. And as well, we usually invite several authors. So Ruby herself is an author and has written several books, and we invite other authors as well to come sign books, do story time with the kids. And so it's a fun event, and that's usually in May. And so if you're interested in that, definitely check out our website, and we'd love for you to join us. On the next slide, I'm sharing the fourth big event that we have for the museum is the Freedom Award. And I'm not sure if any of y'all have joined us for the Freedom Award, but since the museum's inception in 1991, we have hosted the Freedom Award, which is an honor that we bestow to folks from all over the globe who have contributed significantly to civil and human rights. And two of our first recipients back in 1991 were actually Coretta Scott King and Rosa Parks. And since then, we have honored everyone from John Lewis to Oprah to the Dalai Lama to Bishop Desmond Tutu. Michelle Obama was in 2021, John Legend. I mean, anyone that you can think of who has made a contribution to civil and human rights, we've honored. And so we invite you to join us this year. It will be on October 17th. It's one of my favorite events. I've lived all over the country. It's still one of my favorite events. It is a wonderful indoor-outdoor pre-show gala at the Halloran Center and Orpheum Theater. So we kind of do an indoor-outdoor pre-show gala at the Halloran and then go into the Orpheum for the award ceremony. And so we are really excited about that. We haven't announced our honorees for this year, but I know that we've got them. We're reaching out to them now and confirming. But if everybody confirms, it's going to be really exciting. So stay tuned for that. Next slide is really kind of transitioning a little bit to share with you our vision. So I shared with you our mission. I've shared kind of where we've been and what we've been doing. As we look ahead to the future, and in particular under our president, Dr. Wigginton, who you heard from on the video, we've really established and sort of clarified and crystallized our vision for the future. And that really is to become a nationally recognized center of excellence for thought leadership and equitable solutions to address today's challenges in civil and human rights. And so at the center of that will always be the museum experience and the fact that we are sitting on a historic site, but also we recognize that our reach extends around the world, literally. As I mentioned earlier, we have folks that come from all around the world. And so we have over the years continued to expand our virtual programming and expand our reach well outside of Memphis to reach folks, to provide that thought leadership in this particular area. And so we do spend a lot of time outside of Memphis, across the country. You know, our president, Dr. Wigginton, our associate curator Ryan Jones, who's really amazing, our historian essentially, who's really amazing, and so many other folks at the museum who are constantly engaging with folks all over the country, educating, providing talks, partnering collaboratively. And so we'll continue to do that for the foreseeable future as we move forward into you know, especially today with technology. It gives us all of us, a lot of opportunity to make connections that perhaps we otherwise would not have when we're tied to, you know, proximity to place and location. So we're excited about that. The other thing that's coming up for us on the next slide is our museum campus expansion. So here you can see a rendering. On the right side is the former Lorraine Motel, which is the location for our core exhibit for the National Civil Rights Museum. On the left side, that building with sort of the terrace that's jutting out is what we call the Legacy Building. It is formerly the Young and Morrow building, the boarding house where Dr. King's alleged shooter was laid in wait, and from where he is purported to have made the shot over to Lorraine Motel. We acquired that building probably about 2000, in the year 2000, and did some renovation in 2000, but it does not mirror, it's sort of loft-like, if you will. We've been using that building for traveling exhibits, and so we last year broke ground on a major renovation of the Legacy Building, and we are renovating all 3 floors of that building. And even if you've been there before, you may recall that on the first floor, you kind of walk through a tunnel, and then you get into the building. Well, there's no more tunnel. They've already excavated that. So there's the whole first floor, and then a second and a third floor. And the point of the renovation is really to answer the question of what happened after 1968. So many folks say, well, what happened to the civil rights movement, right? And so the Legacy Building renovation is really based on Dr. King, loosely based on Dr. King's last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? So it really speaks to the 55 years since Dr. King left us, and really thinking about the movements that were inspired by his legacy, the progress we've made in these 55 years, but also where we're still struggling. And so there are some key sort of topical areas in that new building around things like gender equity and criminal justice and education, housing, poverty, et cetera. And so it will be a really great interactive, sort of contemporary thematic experience that we believe will really engage folks and continue to encourage people to have the conversation about what's happening today, and how can we inspire them to be engaged in their community and be a catalyst for change. On the next slide, next to the buildings, these are different viewpoints here, but next to that Legacy Building, we are also renovating Founders Park. And thanks to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, they have agreed to help us renovate this park and make a pretty significant, very significant investment in this space. And we believe that this renovation is just as critical as the Legacy Building. This idea of creating green space, this idea of creating sort of meditation space where folks can gather and debrief and congregate either before or after their museum experience. This is an area that will be open to anyone 24 hours a day. It's public, and so it is hopefully going to be an asset to downtown and folks that are traveling downtown to be able to use this space. And, I liken it to a lot of the work that Wolf River is doing in terms of really focusing on how do we connect people in healthy ways and use this, these beautiful green space opportunities to do it. And so we're excited about Founders Park and the complement that it provides to the museum, the indoor museum experience. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. I think this is my last slide. Okay, so that went really quickly, but we really invite you to join us. As I mentioned, we've got King Day on Monday, and it's going to be a really, really great experience. If you want to learn more about the campus expansion, we definitely invite you to check out our website at civilrightsmuseum.org. So again, that's civilrightsmuseum.org. And as well, mark your calendars for October 17th to join us for Freedom Award. It'll be a really, really wonderful event. So that's really what I had for today, but I'm happy to take any questions or happy to dive into maybe some topics that you all had hoped to hear about, but maybe I didn't cover. I'd be happy to share more about the work at the museum and about our history.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was a wonderful presentation. I'm gonna wait a little bit for some questions to come up in the chat box. In the Q&A box, excuse me. But I have one. I have a real interest in civil rights, and I've visited many other civil rights museums and memorials around the country, especially in Alabama. So I guess I'm wondering, since you're the National Civil Rights Museum, what is your relationship with all of these other very important civil rights locations?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, one, I should say that the National Civil Rights Museum is a Smithsonian affiliate. So as far as the Smithsonian and all of its other museums, including the Museum of African American History and Culture in DC, we are in partnership. We are an affiliate of that network of museums, and have a really great relationship throughout the year. In fact, a lot of our traveling exhibits come from sites, which is the Smithsonian Traveling Exhibition Service. So we've got a great relationship there. And then also there is actually an association of African American museums. We call it AAAM. And so we are a member of AAAM, and we do, the organization does conferences every year where they actually gather all of the African American museums, civil rights, social justice museums that come together and in collaboration and partnership, et cetera. I would say that also, and not a lot of people know this. I've been telling my team we've got to really lean into this, but we are the oldest civil rights museum in the country. And so, being 32 years old, many of the museums that have come after 1991, they have come to the National Civil Rights Museum. We have been in partnership with them. They've gone through our exhibits and sort of used them or parts of them as inspiration for new museums that are springing up outside of Memphis. And we're proud of those associations and proud of those partnerships, and are always looking for opportunities to collaborate.
That's great. Okay, here's a question. I missed one little piece of your talk. Did you say the museum is interested in environmentalism?
Well, so I would say not directly per se. We are a history museum. Our focus is civil rights, social justice, and as I mentioned, our pillars are education, arts and culture, and economic empowerment. But I would just say, as a citizen of the community, if you will, we are always in favor of opportunities to ensure that our community and our residents and our citizens, and I'm kind of using community with the big C, is a thriving place to live. And so not to my knowledge are we doing anything directly in that space, but these are things that we do think about, as I mentioned, with the Founders Park renovation and the Paris renovation. These are things that are very important to us in terms of having these spaces for folks to be able to relax, to debrief, to gather while they're on our museum campus.
Right. Okay, here's another question. The museum is constantly changing, and each time I go, there are changes and additions to the exhibits. What is the new exhibit this year?
Oh my goodness. Well, that's a good question. We have basically a portrait exhibit that's happening right now. So if you go to the museum, we have a core exhibit, which is our uh you know our core exhibit that goes from enslaved people to when Dr. King was assassinated, and it's a very rich and in-depth experience. We have lots of people that spend many, many hours at the museum when they're here. Our State of Tennessee gallery also hosts traveling exhibits as well on the Lorraine Motel side. And so we have an exhibit right now that really features portraits of key figures in American history, including Dr. King and other prominent figures, which is really beautiful, and you should definitely check it out. And then of course on the legacy side, I mean, we usually normally have traveling exhibits, but right now it's under construction. So there's a whole lot of activity going on right there, getting ready for that building to open in mid 2025.
Okay. Yeah, I can't wait to see that. Is this museum standalone, or does membership with this museum include membership to any other museums?
That's a really good question. Yeah, we do have memberships. So we are really moving into more philanthropy with our support of the museum. And so we're kind of in the process right now, like reevaluating our membership structure. But we are a member of NARM, the North American Reciprocal Museum Membership Program. And so those that do have memberships of the National Civil Rights Museum do have that reciprocal benefit with NARM. And we are in the process right now of, we're actually launching a new program called Friends of the Lorraine, which will be our monthly donors program. And so we're evaluating whether that program will be able to also take advantage of the NARM benefits at certain levels. So we're kind of right in the midst of that. But yes, our current members do have NARM benefits as well. And then we accept museum members from other places that want to come and visit the museum.
Great. Who designed the NCRM logo?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? Somebody just told me this recently, and I'm hesitating to say what I think it is because I think I don't want to get it wrong. But that's a really good question. I might have to come back. I'll have to put it in the YouTube chat or something and let you all know. Yeah. It's funny. I will say we've been noodling. So I took over marketing last year, and as we've been evaluating all of our strategies and our brand recognition and all the things, we've been looking at the logo and noodling on it, and actually even explored some other options, and nothing was as strong as our current logo, which we kind of affectionately call the Pushing Man. And so the idea behind this Pushing Man obviously is, pushing against any kinds of oppression, all of the negative aspects of our past, and really pushing into the future. And so we said, hey, we love the Pushing Man. We gotta keep it.
Okay, here's another interesting question. Does the museum address any topics regarding health? Meaning there is a distinct lack of knowledge about health within certain communities. Is this something that the museum addresses?
It's a good question. And as I was mentioning before, with us identifying and sort of solidifying our strategic pillars under economic empowerment, we are looking at things like health equity, which is, you can think about vice versa. When you don't have the resources, you may not have the access to health care, and even vice versa. In some cases, if you don't have proper medical insurance, it could really, dive you into some really challenging economic situations. And so this is something that we've been talking about, and you're going to see a lot more programming from the National Civil Rights Museum around health equity. Last year, I would say in 2022, so June 2022, we actually partnered with the Milken Institute. They're a think tank out of DC. to host a health equity summit and at the museum in Memphis. And so we had folks from all over the country, pharmaceutical executives, healthcare insurance companies, folks in the community who are focused in this space, practitioners, healthcare practitioners, all convened at the National Civil Rights Museum in June 2022 to have an all-day, it was 2-day actually, summit focused on health equity and disparities and what some solutions could be. And there was a really incredible white paper actually that was produced from those 2 days of work. And I'll have to make sure I'll talk to our team and make sure that white paper is available on our website. But that really kind of kicked off under Dr. Wigginton's leadership, our focus on health equity, and we're continuing to partner with some. We're working on it actually right now on some collaborations for this year as we're continuing to educate and lean into that space. I think the other thing around health that we do every year, and it's kind of timely as we think about King Day coming up, is we partner with Vitalent and the Mid-South Food Bank on King Day every year. And it's, I think for both of the organizations, it's technically the largest donation days that they have. So Vitalent is blood donation. And then, of course, the Mid-South Food Bank collects canned goods and other non-perishables on King Day. And so, again, that's our focus on, especially with blood donation, is our focus to help to address some of the disparities around health, because as we know, there are a lot of needs for blood transfusions, including even sickle cell patients, which adversely affects Black and Brown communities. And unfortunately, there's not always enough blood that's donated from those communities to really help those patients. And so we do partner with Vitalent every year in order to help to collect as much blood as possible. During the pandemic, we also did a lot of we did vaccination drives, education and vaccination drives to encourage the community to vaccinate themselves. So, we are always looking for those kinds of opportunities, whatever we can do using our platform to get folks educated and to even act, as we are doing with the blood donation and other opportunities.
Well, that's wonderful. I think I will end with a question that Susan Graham had, which was, of all the international visitors, are there any particular countries that tend to top the list on the numbers?
That's a good question. I would say, and I'll need to ask my team too. I don't know if we've done a really detailed assessment of this, so I'd be kind of curious too. But I would say, based on what I've seen, we actually get a lot of engagement from Europe, from the Caribbean, from Canada. And so, that's usually what we see a lot of. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, on any given day in the museum. In fact, this just happened to me over the holidays. I was in the museum for a little bit, just hanging out, and I heard like 3 or 4 different languages spoken just in that hour that I was in the museum. And so it's a wonderful thing to see folks that are coming here and educating themselves on this aspect of American history. And it's interesting too, because depending on where someone's coming from, in some cases all of this is very foreign to them. We had some Canadian visitors in last fall, and we had some really, really in-depth conversations about this history, because they just were not, it was so different, and they had so many questions about what had transpired and kind of where we are today and how things have progressed and evolved. And so it can lead to some really, really meaningful conversations for sure.
That's just wonderful. Okay, well, that is it for questions. I'm going to pass it back over to Eric to wrap us up. And thank you, Tiffany, so much.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
Eric, you're muted.
Of course. Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Tiffany. Great questions from the group. There's a wonderful book called Dumping in Dixie, Race, Class, and Environmental Quality that really explores many of the intersectional issues that both the Wolf River Conservancy and the National Civil Rights Museum work to address every day. So I'd encourage anybody out there with interest in our work or the work of the National Civil Rights Museum to check that book out. But Tiffany, thank you so much for your time this evening. We have had a great time listening to your presentation and learning more about the National Civil Rights Museum. Please check their website at civilrightsmuseum.org or check our website at wolfriver.org. And again, our 2024 Restoration Series kicks off this Saturday. And so we hope to see many of you out there at our Epping Way location at 10 a.m. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Good evening.